All right, we are recording. 3, 2, 1. Hello, this is David Gonzo Mamano on the Gonzo Experience Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you sharing some heartbeats with us today. I have a great guest on today because not only is he a guest and not only is he perfect guest for this podcast because he's got so much to share, he's also just a great friend and a great human. I've known him since 2007, and his name is Marc Rousso. Marc, welcome to the show.
I am super excited to be on this show with you.
Really, really appreciate it.
I'm so excited. I put it on my goals of like what it is that I want to accomplish. Being on the Gonzo show is definitely, high up there.
Nice. Number 11 out of 10. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So I want to tell everybody that Marc and I go back. We did meet in 2007. And like you may have heard me mention this program before because some of my guests have been at it. The Entrepreneurial Masters Program at MIT. We got our Entrepreneurial Master's Certificate. By no means do we have our degree. I don't have my degree in entrepreneurship from MIT. Maybe you do, Marc. But we have a certificate from it's a partnership between EO Entrepreneurs Organization and MIT. It used to be called Birthing of Giants, and I think we were the first year when they changed it to EMP Entrepreneurial Masters Program, which sounds really nice. And that's where we met.
Fantastic executive education.
Yes,
we did that 3 years in a row. We went back to a satellite of MIT for a week a year for 3 years, and man, that was one of the best, one of the most prolific entrepreneur experiences that really validated becoming an entrepreneur and who I was as an entrepreneur.
And you had the good fortune of sitting next to a young blonde woman who was just kind of starting a new business called Kendra Scott Jewelry. Yes. And she's, I believe her BHAG that first year was to create $1 billion business. And a little over a year ago, her business got valued at $1 billion when she sold a good portion of it. So that was a pretty good prediction on her part. Huh?
It was pretty awesome. We sat in the back row 3 years in a row, and we had a great time. And she's just a fantastic entrepreneur, very inspiring of who she's become and the adversity that she's faced in order to achieve what she's achieved. And what I love about that program is that Kendra is the shining star, but there were 60 of us, and I would imagine of the 60, all of us had an incredible level of success. I mean, that class and that program provided amazing validation, amazing foundational instruction of how to be an entrepreneur and to thrive and to take those and to take bits and pieces and apply it back into your own business. And so that's what I truly love. But, like Sebastian, from Switzerland has done an amazing job. Ryan in Australia, Pete in Edmonton. I mean, like you can, even Josh, who you had on the store on the Gonzo a couple of weeks ago. I mean, he's done amazing too. You can't.
I like that. Even Josh did okay, right?
I mean, even Josh.
Who would have thought? Josh Frey. 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, he was on. Yeah.
Right.
But David Hauser from Grasshopper, which became a very successful business. Of course, we had, I believe the only time that one of the teachers, the trainers, was also a student, the great Cameron Harold, who's been on my podcast as well. And he's gone on to some great things too. So yeah, we had a really good class. And so Gonzo family here, I want to tell you what we're going to do on this episode. So Marc, he's just a treasure trove of like great things going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. I wish we probably could talk. I could probably do like a Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast with Marc. But I usually try to go around a half an hour. We might go a little bit longer, but first and foremost, Marc, he's the CEO, but he calls himself, or they call him Captain Vision, of just a great company, J. Marc Homes. And they build beautiful, if you see the pictures on the site and social media, just drop dead, like amazing, better homes and gardens on steroids type of homes that are in the Seattle area. and they're art. They are artwork. They're beautiful. So we're going to talk about that, and then we're also going to talk about during COVID. Marc did a couple things, and one thing was following a lifelong passion of being a DJ. And I'm not talking like a DJ on a radio station. I'm talking like, your house club, event DJ, right? Mixing great music. I want to talk about that as well. And then, I'm remembering you did another cool thing through COVID too. You viewed it as an opportunity to take your family around the world and just kind of homeschool them and have the travels be their education, right? And which was really cool too.
That's right. We had an amazing adventure. And it all follows, the kind of these 8 equities of life. And we'll talk a little bit about that on our podcast.
Yep. Yeah. So Marc, I want to tease that a little bit too, because Marc has, with his success, he's a sharer. He loves to help others as well in a very sincere way. That's not just it's not fluffy. I mean, he likes to go deep and really help people. And so one of the things that he's done with his life to bring it to the next level is he's focused on 8 areas. And so it's family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, career, and relationship with spouse. And so we're going to talk about that as well, how you're striving to max out each of those categories too. So, but let's go back to the beginning. So I met Marc in 2007, and this was the year before the Great Recession. We were all doing pretty well. A lot of chest pounding, a lot of testosterone going on in that room, right? Not Kendra, but there were like 55 men in that room, right? So we were all doing pretty well. We're all pretty proud of ourselves, right? And then 2008, 2009 hit, so the Great Recession, which in what got hit the hardest in that recession was anybody related to the home industry, mortgages, and home building. So
yes, that's right.
You came back pretty vulnerable. I mean, you were very open to sharing what was going on. You were scared. It was a tough time for you, right? So kind of share, that experience with us, how you were doing really well. You start, and then what happened and how did you get out of it?
Yeah. So I've been an entrepreneur since I was 20 years old. My grandfather was an entrepreneur at the Pike Place Market. My dad was an entrepreneur, had a furniture store about a block and away from the Pike Place Market. And I became an entrepreneur at 20 years old. And our first entrepreneurial business was, we were DJs, my business partner and I, we were DJs at the University of Washington. We DJ'd all the fraternities and sororities and clubs and whatnot. And we did that for about 4 or 5 years, 500, 700 parties. And that was a blast. We sold that business for a whopping $15,000 and started buying fixer rental properties and bought them, fixed them up, and kept them. By the time we were 30, we had about 35 rental houses, and we pivoted into developing land. And we developed land. One of those pieces of properties had a little bit of land associated with it. And we kept on finding other opportunities to buy a house, develop it. And we grow that business. We had about $50 million of land, and right around 2007, 2008. And once the real estate market started going sideways, it was like in Vegas and hitting sevens on the craps table, and poof, 20 years, almost 20 years to build a business. In 18 years, poof, it was gone. And so that was a very humbling and depressing time to kind of just watch it all unravel. And the good fortune was that I was at EMP at the start of this. I had a brotherhood of people that supported me and were there by my side to push and pull and get me out of the funk and depression that I was in, and that allowed us to restart and become who we are today. And that's J. Marc Homes.
Yeah. So I remember, I mean, you were in rightly so. I mean, you were like, I think you were $1 million in debt you shared with us, right? I mean, it was you were in a valley, right? What's that?
$2.5 million. Well, yeah, $2.5 million. When we liquidated all of our rental properties, And when we were done, we were $2.5 million of debt.
Wow.
And
Well, so,
we chose not to file bankruptcy. We chose to own up to the debt and pay that, agree to pay that debt over the course of 20 years. And we ended up paying it off within 7. And we didn't know how we were going to do it. We just believed in ourselves that, we were going to figure it out. And that's where J. Marc Holmes came in. And we were birthed in the recession. And I think that was a super humbling experience, because, when you go through that much adversity, it gives you a lot of perspective. And entrepreneurs, we have it tough. I mean, there's a lot of things that we go through that other people that don't. And I think that when you lose it all, at least for me, it made me recognize how perhaps my ego was in the way of my previous business. It provided a lot of humility. And so I then changed my whole perspective of what kind of leader I wanted to become, and follow a servant leader mentality of where I was here to serve, not to boost, trying to prove myself. And I think that was, I mean, a $10 million, the $10 million lesson, at 38 years old was that I didn't have to prove myself to anybody. I only had to be happy and content with my own definition of success, not someone else's definition of success. And I think that has carried with me as a badge of honor of, watching people have success and being on the path that I'm on, with these 8 equities of life that I've told you about, that I don't get confused that someone else is having this great success and I have to have it too. I can be like, that is great for them. I'm on this path and I'm happy with my path.
You don't have what they say, FOMO.
No, I don't have FOMO.
No FOMO.
I become happy and content with my life, and what I have in it. And I control my own destiny. We all control our own destiny. We control our destiny of what it is that we want out of life, because whatever it is that you've wanted in the past, you have currently. And I think that it's a part of a manifestation and a law of attraction.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. So you and your partner, you really buckled down, got out of $2.5 million of debt, sold all your so you started over in a hole.
Yes.
And
with 2 little kids. So this is kind of some perspective, is that I had 2 little kids. I wasn't able to take a paycheck for 5 years. My wife was supporting us. My best friend died of cancer. I had 2 brain surgeries in that time, and around the same time, my CFO died of a brain aneurysm. And this was all within a few years of one another. And wow. All of that kind of just, makes you realize and have an element of gratefulness of that you're around and that you're alive. And, I think my buddy Joey, who passed away, he had 4 kids, 3 under the age of 5. His last words to me was that he just wished he had more time to spend with his kids and his wife. And I'm like, what great perspective. So, I had all of this burden kind of on my life. I was massively depressed. I mean, there don't think I could have been more depressed. There was a lot going against me, and what got me back out of this funk was what started having success in the first place. And that was following these 8 equities of life that I told you about. I asked, since I was 22, 23 years old, my cousin Saul introduced me to answering these 2 questions. what am I most dissatisfied with in my life? And if life were perfect, what would it look like? And it's in a future year, like in a year from now or 10 years from now. So, and the 8 equities is, the first one is family. So if life were perfect, in my family life, or what am I most dissatisfied with in my family life? What would it look like? So, as an example, my son, my daughter was born when my son was 18 months, and I spent all the time with my son, because my wife was breastfeeding and doing all that. But after a couple of years, I didn't feel I had a relationship with my daughter. So I asked myself the question, what am I most dissatisfied with in my relationship, in my family? And it was, I didn't have a relationship with my daughter. Okay, well, if life were perfect, what would it look like? Well, I would go do fun things with my daughter and spend one-on-one time. Okay, what does she like to do? Well, she loved going to the zoo. So we would go to the zoo a couple times a month. She loved going to hot chocolate. So we went to the best places in Seattle for hot chocolate. Or she loved, now kind of fast forward, she loves we go to Costco together, or we go to boba tea, or we go, and sometimes she just likes going to the car wash. But it was like trying to find the things that she enjoyed. And I kind of took it another step further, is that I didn't ever I wanted my kids to always remember me, like one-on-one time. So we established a like daddy son trips. So every year, one-on-one, I go on these trips with my kids, and it would be one-on-one what they would want to do. So for my daughter, guess what we did? We went to zoos across the country. One year we went to Omaha, Nebraska. The next year we went to St. Louis, Missouri. The next year we went to San Diego. After one of those, she said, "Hey, Dad, I don't really want to go to the zoos anymore." So I was like, "Okay, what would she want to do?" So the next year we went to Disney World. The year after that, we went to concerts. We went into the Ariana Grande concert, and then the Billboard Music Award concert. And it was just doing things for them. And so that was kind of like how I went back, and got myself to having, like, getting reframing what I wanted out of the life, because I couldn't have gone much deeper and further. I had no money. I lost my best friend. I was having to ask my wife every month for the money needed to pay the mortgage. I had no business. I had no income. I lost my CFO. I mean, I was just depressed. And so it was like these kind of having this mentality of, okay, what do I want my life to look like, and to get myself out of it. And so that was one area, if life were perfect in my family life, starting with that area. And because that was just like, I would always, because that was the most important, like it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter what trips, doesn't matter any of that, as long as you're spending one-on-one time and your kids kind of remember that.
Now, so your son must have been like, "Hey, Dad, come on. What about me?" Or maybe your wife. But what I mean, how did you manage all this?
Well, that was just, I mean, that was what I was most dissatisfied with. It didn't mean that I stopped hanging out with my son or stopped
Right?
hanging
Yeah.
out with my wife.
There was enough Marc to go around for everybody.
For sure. I mean, a 2-year-old only wants to spend so much time with their dad. But I mean, over the
Right.
course of time, those hours and those trips, they add up. They all, they remember those times. And you'll never regret spending that one-on-one time with the only time you will regret is if you didn't do it.
Right.
But there's no better time to start than today.
Yep.
And so it's like living a life without regrets.
Yep.
So the second area of life that we focused on was family, physical. So if life were perfect, what am I most dissatisfied with my life? And if life were perfect, and so I've always been a Husky kid. My bar mitzvah, we went to the Husky big and tall store to like find me a bar mitzvah suit. And so I put down, well, I want to do an Ironman. I want to do a half Ironman. And a half Ironman, you just can't show up when you're going to do, swim 1.2 miles and bike 56 miles and run 13. You can't just show up for that and expect any sort of, you can't finish. So I trained for an entire year, hired a coach, and he showed up every single day at my doorstep, and we trained. We ran in the snow, in the rain. We would swim every day, and over the course of a year, I finally was able to do the Victoria Half Ironman, and it was, I finished it in just under 8 hours. And it was an amazing, it was amazing metaphor for, that has stuck with me for, if you apply time and energy over the course of a long period of time, what you can accomplish. And I look at it as like the 1,000-hour rule, or the 1,000-hour mark, is that if you do it, like we all know Malcolm Gladwell says, if you do 10,000 hours of something, you become a world-class expert. And Malcolm Gladwell, in his book, if you remember specifically, he said, a minimum of 10,000, because it could be a lot more. But if you spend 1,000 hours doing anything, you're going to get to be, okay, or, pretty decent at it. And so, I probably spent 1,000 hours training for that half Ironman to then ultimately, after a year of training, to then be able to perform and finish it. And I had to have, it was another learning lesson from doing that half Ironman, is that the person that finished the half Ironman finished it in 4 hours and change. He was able to finish, go home, shower, take a nap, watch a movie, come back and collect his trophy in the same amount of time it took me to run my race. But that was his definition of success, right? His definition of success was to win the race. And my definition of success was to, often are we now going through life and like seeing somebody else and going, that is what I want as success. And deviating from what you want out of life because you see somebody else's level of success. So that's like the second element of the 8 equities of life: family, physical, and then there's financial. Financial is, are you living in the house, or you having the cars, or the retirement, or savings? And if life were perfect, what would it look like? The next would be family, physical, financial, mental, like kind of learning and growing. If life were, what are you most dissatisfied with in your mental life, and books or tape and whatnot? And if life were perfect, what would you be learning? And so those are the first 4 elements of kind of reframing life after losing it all, kind of putting all this into perspective of how do you navigate a day around these elements.
So those are the first 4. And then the others are, you have, spiritual, social, career, and relationship with the spouse. And those are your 8, right?
That's right.
And those it can be different for different people, right? So.
Well, that you look at your entire life, like that is where, that should cover everything. That should cover all of the equity. And then, like, so for instance, family life or relationship life. Why is your spouse not in your family? Well, of course she's in your family, but as we know, like being married, it takes full-time attention, and it requires its own box to be able to be a loving and supportive spouse and loving and supportive partner. And so, what are you most dissatisfied with in the relationship, or if life were perfect? Are you still on this?
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Yeah, my video went off, but we're good.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I just like seeing your pretty face. Now I got a different pretty face of yours.
Yeah, it's Zoom just said I'm unstable, and I'm like, Zoom, how do you know that? But so I shut off my video for more bandwidth. But we hear you loud and clear, buddy.
How do they know that? They did, was not without its challenges in my relationship. But one of the things that one of our counselors talked to us about was, planning trips for your significant other, where I would plan like a weekend, and when I was broke, it was just staying at home and maybe getting a massage therapist, or like having a staycation, or now it's like going to areas that she would want to do, doing the things that she would want to do, and plan those around for her on her birthday, or she would do the same thing for me for my birthday. And it was just like little thing that would make her feel appreciated, during the relationship.
Yep, I love it, and obviously it was very important. I mean, for her to really support you during that whole time period, not only financially, as you said, but emotionally, right? Because I mean, it must have been. I'm imagining that was a test of your relationship for a while, and you obviously both endured it, and it looks like you're stronger because of it.
100% stronger because of it. And I'm very grateful to her for the love and support and being with me every step along the way. And so now, we've had this great, we've created this great life, and we've been following these intentions of if life were perfect, what would it look like? And it's kind of, the same thing with business, trying to create a business that can run without me. That is everything that we've learned in EMP to apply it back into this current business, which is J. Marc Homes.
And obviously you are out of your depression. You are out of your economic depression.
I'm out of the depression. I will tell you, getting an interview without like seeing the other person, it's not as fun without the visual.
All right, I put my video back on. How's that? We'll see how it goes.
All right. But are you supposed to have your shirt off or on?
No, I was a little surprised for you. A little sorry. A little bonus. So Marc, before we wrap up, like I said, we could probably talk for like 3 hours, but we covered, J. Marc Homes, you're back on track, very successful, and able to help support the family now. Right. Which I'm sure your wife is happy about too. Great. Really, really appreciate the 8 categories that you're setting up. And I'm going to repeat those questions too, because they're so important. So the first question is, what am I most dissatisfied with my life? Mm-hmm. And if my life was perfect, what would it look like? I think that's great. And, you gave some great examples. And again, Marc's 8 areas, and they could be for all of us: family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, career, and relationship with spouse. Man, you master all those things. You're doing pretty good in life. I did not know you did half an Ironman, so congratulations about that. Maybe I did know, but I forgot, which I can't believe I would have forgot that. So congratulations, that's phenomenal.
Sure.
And then before we go, I do want to talk about, you made sure that I highlighted that it's not a second career, it is a hobby.
Sure.
But you're DJ Marc in the house right now. So tell us a little. I mean, this is like like I said, this is not you just playing around or DJing weekends at a radio station. I mean, this is like you're full fledged, could be at the club putting on great shows for people. Right. So tell us, like, how did this happen to be? Did it happen during COVID? You had some extra time and I want to do this, or what was the whole regenesis of this?
Yeah. So obviously I DJ'd about, in my early 20s with my business partner, and gave it up to be an entrepreneur. But it was always with me. Like, I always loved the DJing. I always loved music. And that um, conversation starter, like, if you could be anything in the world, what would you be? Let me ask you, if you could become anything in the world, what would you do?
Well, that's a very appropriate question right now, because in my early 20s, I was a stand-up comedian. And then when my, life took over with business and family, I stopped doing it. And as you know, about a month ago, this is 20 plus years later, I got up the nerve to do it again. And did it here at a club here in Rochester, New York. And I did a twist where I mixed business and comedy. I billed it as Tony Robbins and Jerry Seinfeld had a baby, and it's Dave Bomano. And I freaking loved it. I had about 170 people there, and standing ovation. And, when are you going to do it again, Dave? And the owner of the club wants to book me at other clubs. So to answer your question, I would love to be a professional, kind of, I'll say, motivational comedian, if that makes sense, mixing business with comedy. And
I love it, David. I love it.
So it's funny. We both have these things that we did in our early 20s. We missed them and we brought them back. Right.
Right. And so I always wanted to go back to DJing, and, I would listen to DJs, or I'd watch DJs, and I was like, I'm still pretty good. And so I went and bought all equipment. I went to London for a week to learn how to become a DJ with all this new equipment. And over the course of the last 3 years, I have been working really hard to improve my hobby and become good at DJing again. And what does that mean? And so I produce music with a producer out of Amsterdam. And now I've been producing some music with various artists all around the world. I have solo music coming out in 2022. And this is all to be able to get onto the stage to DJ in front of people. And so this Friday night, I have my first DJ gig in front of hundreds of people. I'm opening for the opener of this prolific DJ, the number one DJ based out of China that is coming to town, and it is my start. And I am kind of finding my way, navigating what kind of DJ I want to be and where I want to DJ at. My goal is to DJ at the Winter Music Awards in Miami this upcoming March, and produce some songs over the course of, or get some songs released on my own label called Charity Records. And this isn't like a moneymaker for me, but it's, all the proceeds that come from the sales of my songs go for get distributed to charity. And it's the charity that I have sponsored is called Friends of the Children, and it's to provide mentors to underprivileged kids all across the United States. And it's one that I truly love, because I know that I wouldn't be at where I am today in life without mentors, without our good friend Warren Rustan and his love and support and leadership, providing, servant leadership to me and teaching me servant leadership. And so anyway, so I want to be able to give that back to kids. So it's all kind of like full circle of like, okay, DJing for a good cause, giving mentors, and being able to leave my mark in this world in many ways. And if it's also to be able to inspire others, because if a 50-year-old like you becoming a comedian, or me, DJing, or my friend that opened an auto body shop, or it's just like, you're never too old. It's never too late. And you can never live a life without regrets, and if life were perfect, what would it look like? And it's kind of how, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, my wife and I and kids, we traveled the world during the pandemic, all because I had this goal during the depths of the recession. I wrote my 10-year goals, 2010 to 2020, that I wanted my family to live abroad in France for a year. My mom was born and raised in Paris, and I thought, how cool would it be if we could all experience what living in France would be like? So one day, my wife and I are walking, and she said, it's going to be dark and cloudy and gray in Seattle, and I don't want to be here if we're all going to be cooped up in the house. And I said, well, where do you want to go? She said, how about Europe? And I was like, okay, well, my wife and kids all have Canadian citizenship. They could leave anytime. So I had to figure out how I could get out of the country. So I applied to get my mom's birth certificate from Paris so that I could then file my own citizenship. They didn't provide me with her birth certificate. They sent me my own. And I was like, what? And lo and behold, my mom registered my sister and I for having French citizenship in having French citizenship. So I got my birth certificate, was able to go down to San Francisco. Within 30 days, I had my passport. I mean, from the time that we thought about it to the time that I got my passport in hand was 90 days. And then off we went. We traveled. We went to Greece for a month, Cape Town for 3.5 months, back to Greece, and then skied in Zermatt for a month. And we had the most magnificent 6 months of our lives. And it was all from this whole goal setting perspective is if life were perfect, what would it look like? Well, I would spend a year in France. And it didn't go exactly as we planned. We didn't spend a year in France, but we traveled to some amazing places, and it was the best 6 months of my life. It brought my family and I closer together. And that's kind of why I wanted to be on the show with you is to give people the opportunity to believe and to dream, right? We are all entrepreneurs. We're all creative. We're all these fierce kind of creative beings. We spend weekends thinking about the business plan of what our next year is going to look like for our company. And that's 1/8 of our life. And then we will spend months, and we will spend hours, week after week after week. What's our business going to look like? And how's our business plan doing? How's our business plan doing? How's our business plan doing? But how many people actually do this for their lives? How many people will say, okay, my family life, if it were perfect, what would it look like? What are the action plans that I need to do in order to make this happen? And then look at it every single week and say, okay, here's the time I'm going to spend with my son. Here's the time I'm going to spend with my daughter. I'm going to go see my mom. I'm going to go see my dad. I'm going to go see my cousins. And the same thing for like your physical life or your mental life. Okay, this is what I want to learn. And it goes down through all of those equities: family, physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, career, and relationship. And if you dream about each one of those and what's possible, like there's nothing that you can't do. You can even become a world-class comedian
or a world-class DJ.
Or world-class DJ.
Yep.
Writing out where you want to DJ, write out where you want to be. Like in a year from now, I want to be having, with 1,000 people in the room or 10,000 people. I want to open up for Jerry Seinfeld. I mean, like you can write crazy shit. Like,
yeah.
And it's not crazy because like it's all possible.
Right. Yeah. You just inspired me. Maybe I'm going to put that down. Open up for Jerry Seinfeld and Tony Robbins.
There you go. Right. And like, why not? Why not? And that's the stuff that you put out there. And it's the crazy thing, it's like, you have to want it. Like that's it's not for me. It's not my definition of success of what you should do. It's what your definition of success is. And it may be far bigger than what I just put, maybe it is having 20,000 people, that are paying to come and see you. Like, why not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, so that, thank you for having me on your show. I love listening to your program. It's super inspiring of what you are an amazing person that asks tremendous questions of your guests, and you're an easy person to have a conversation with.
Well, thank you. You are too, Marc. And I also got to give you credit because I think it was in year 2 of the EMP program we were in. And you said, "Hey, Dave, have you seen The Pursuit of Happiness yet?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't seen it." And you're like, "What is wrong with you? You're the most positive person I know. You need to see this movie." You literally said that. I'm like, "All right." And when I got home, I watched it and I'm like, "Oh my God, Marc knows me so well. This is now my favorite movie." And I watch it a few times a year with my kids, right? Because it's just such a good recalibration movie about what's really important and what you can do when you're focused, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Speaking of, have you watched King Richard?
I have not. Is that the next one?
No. Well, that's the story of Serena and Venus Williams's path to becoming of success.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Richard is the dad. I think it was King. I think the story. I think it's King Richard. It's the dad's path of what he wanted success to look like for his kids, and what he had to do in taking him out of Compton, and 2 black girls playing tennis.
Yeah.
And it, like, you have to watch it tonight. Like, it is. It almost had me crying the entire time. It was absolutely an amazing movie.
Awesome. All right. You are like my go-to movie guy. So thank you for that.
Anytime.
Marc Rousso. And if you want to look him up online, he's got 2 unique spellings, right? So it's Marc with the C, M-A-R-C. And then you think Rousseau, R-U-S-S-O, but it's R-O-U-S-S-O, the French Rousseau, right? So, and Marc, if people do want to just connect with you and maybe ask you a few more questions, learn more about you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
I think the best way to get a hold of me is if you're on Facebook, just find me on Facebook at Marc Rousso, or Instagram. You can find me on Instagram on Marc Rousso as well, and DM me, and I'm happy to connect with anyone anytime, and share a little bit more about whatever experiences that you're looking for.
Appreciate that, Marc. You're an amazing human, amazing story. And one of the reasons I love about you is because you're willing to share it all. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that just want to talk about all the good stuff. But you talk about the good, bad, and ugly, and how it's helped shape you to the person you are today, humble and successful and giving back. So I appreciate that. And I know we all appreciate that, Marc, and I wish you continued massive success. And I look forward to, backstage passes to come see you in Miami in March. So that would be fantastic.
That's right. And backstage passes to come see you where Jerry Seinfeld's opening for you.
I love it. You got it. I got it. You could introduce me. How's that? Right. Marc, and actually, if anybody wants a personal introduction to Marc, throw me an email, david@davidmamano.com, and I'll give you a personal intro. Marc, thanks again. Appreciate you sharing Heartbeats with me today and all of us today. And I also want to thank the Gonzo family. Thank you for listening and watching, and appreciate you. And there's a lot of podcasts out there, and the fact that you're listening to this one means the world to me. So thanks again, Marc. Thanks again, Gonzo family. Appreciate all of you. Have a great day, and make sure to stay awesome.